Hello everyone. Today, this video is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to be working out while talking about the gods of Asatru. This isn't going to be a specific topic, but more of a general rant on the gods of Asatru, which are the Northern European gods of our ancestors. The ones that are basically making a comeback through Asatru, the Re-constructionist religion. Now, I understand these gods as being forms of consciousness, and also forces that have a relationship to humanity, a relationship on this planet specifically, and a relationship to, and I usually don't think of them as specific to white people. I just think of them as specific forces on this planet, described through our white ancestors, basically. But I don't think of them as being just gods for white people. I think of them as being forces of consciousness that have an impact, that have an active narrative on this planet of Earth. For whoever looks to them, for whoever looks up to them, for whoever tries to understand them, the gods of Asatru, Re-constructionist religion, but the old gods, the very old gods, Northern European gods, understanding them through the reconstruction that's happening now. But they have always been, and that they always will be. They are primordial forces. They are forces of consciousness that are bigger consciousness than humanity. They have bigger and more vast consciousnesses than a human being might. These gods in Asatru, they are forces that anyone can look up to, that anyone can see if they know how to sacrifice the right things. It's not about sacrificing human beings, animals, things like that. It's all about sacrifices within. It's all about sacrifices of ideas even, of thoughts, of devoting thought processes and one's even ritualistic practices towards them. And we usually think of them through ritual. We usually think of them as being gods that accept meat and beer as offerings, but really I see them through a more inner light, a light that is more attuned to an inner relationship than the outer sacrifices and the outer ritual. But I'll continue in 1 second after I do a set. And a lot of the time when I'm weightlifting, I'll light a candle, like I'll do right now. And I dedicate a weightlifting session and my thoughts for that session while I'm weightlifting to a certain force, a certain god, or just God in general, the overarching God that that most Christians and monotheists believe in. I believe that source, that God is at the top of everything, but God functions through different pieces of himself. He has different ways that he deals with reality in the universe, and even specifically Earth, through different pieces of himself. And as a Hindu, I believe that everything is a part of God. But being a Hindu is something that is a religion that one could be a part of and add on other pieces, other belief systems, because Hinduism is so open. So I'm also Asatru, and I devote my time and certain inner sacrifices and understanding to the ancient European gods of my ancestors, basically. But and you know, these gods, they've had name changes. Even in the farthest reaches of Northern Europe, Odin wasn't always known as Odin, but the force was still the same. So right now I'm going to dedicate this candle to Odin. And what I have around my neck right now is the rune Ansus, which is considered Odin's rune. And it's the rune that deals with calling upon the gods. And I'm going to put this necklace around this candle, basically allowing the vibration to synergize with the candle and with the offering. And that isn't necessary. Talismans aren't necessary, but I like to use them. I call Odin by 3 names. He's kind of like the father of the gods, the peak of consciousness for the Northern European gods, the ones very associated with nature. Northern European gods are very associated with nature and strength in human beings, which is a part of nature. Odin, I call him by 3 names, like I said, Odin, Allfather, and Werewolf. Now, where we get the term, the phrase Allfather, is Allfather, Alfahdir, if I'm correct. I think I'm working that out right. But that's where we get the term Allfather, and it basically means the same thing. And Wordwolf is the 3rd name that I associate with Odin. Now, Wordwolf is not a commonly known name. It was a revealed name to a certain modern-day berserker. Not a berserker, because it has to do with the bear spirit, but Ulfhednar. I think that's the wolf spirit. And he basically tries to take on the spirit of a wolf through spiritual methods and physical exertion to experience that spiritual state. I'm not going to go into it because I don't know a whole lot about it, but I call him Wordwolf because that was what was revealed to that berserker that I'm talking about. And Wordwolf is obviously not something to do with necessarily just being a berserker, but the kind of, if I'm interpreting it correctly, the inspiration that a berserker can basically gain. Being a berserker, Ulfhednar, being one with an animal spirit opens one up to pure inspiration, but as human beings we can use it to greater advantage than animals can. And Wordwolf basically means, if I'm understanding it correctly, one who is well with words, one who can use words, who can aim words and be willful through one's speaking, as far as ideas are concerned, as far as writing, understanding, inspiration, things like that, insight. That's my understanding of Wordwolf, and that's the 3rd name I know Odin by. But I'm going to go ahead and do another set. And why does it help to physically exert oneself when one's trying to get to know the gods? When one is trying to receive inspiration? And it doesn't unless you couple it with an ability to interpret the inspiration. You have to be a handler of language. You have to be an understander of the finer points of ideology, of ideas. But those coupled with the insight, the pure, raw, primordial insight one can achieve through the pureness, the non-ego-centered pureness of making one's spirit one with an animal spirit. Those 3 things coupled together can create a far greater spiritual point of progress, a spiritual method of progress. And it's not for everyone. Working with the gods in this way, to where you physically exert yourself to the extent that you're open to pure inspiration, and then you harvest that inspiration through your human understanding, it's a very difficult process. And it's something that maybe a Navy SEAL might do, or even a pure academic might do, though his threshold will surprisingly be similar to the Navy SEALs, pushing them over the edge. Even if his body can't take it, there is a certain threshold that is basically pursued by various types of people. There's a threshold as a human being where if you reach that physical exertion threshold, that physical pain threshold, that physical even close to death threshold, there's that threshold in all human beings that's around the same area. And once you reach it, the ego is broken down. It's broken down into basically nothingness, to where the ego doesn't exist. And you don't see a difference between yourself and other people. You don't see a difference between yourself and the last idea you had in your mind. So if you reach this point of physical exertion and you think, I am connected to Odin, or you think I'm a wolf, or you think I'm a bear, or you think I know everything about combat. The last thought that you have once the ego is broken down is basically the thought that becomes you, and you don't see a separation between yourself and the world because the ego is gone, and that last thought is stuck in your head. So it can be a very powerful combination. And it's medically speaking, it's a unification of the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. And I don't know much more than that about it. I don't want to get into the medical side, but because I'm talking about the spiritual side. But that's how to become one with Odin. You can become one with other gods in that way, or at least aspects of these gods. Not necessarily one with Odin, but Odin's influence, and connect closer to a pure state of spiritual being that is beyond ego. And in most spiritual systems, ego is useful, but it also needs to be understood in its proper context, and basically overcome as you go on in your spiritual progress, and in many systems. Now, in Asatru, if I was going to talk about Thor, he's very much connected to nature. Maybe he might be an aspect of Odin, you could look at it that way, but if you're looking at him as two separate gods, he's more connected to nature than Odin. His mother is Earth, and his father is Odin. I think Odin's mother's name in Asatru is Yora, something like that. But I think of her as Mother Earth. And that's basically, Odin represents certain aspects of the sky, meeting with Earth, the giant Earth, which is giants are more elemental, creates Thor. And this being is a form of consciousness as well, of course, like I said previously. And Thor is, he is the strength in man that is very much connected to our legs, our lower chakras, if I was going to throw some Eastern understanding in there, our lower chakras, our connection to Earth, our strength gained through our animalistic heritage, going far back, and I do believe in evolution, going very far back, connecting to that strength that we had. Thor isn't usually seen as very bright, but I'm not sure if that's exactly an accurate assumption or an accurate description. I think that Thor is bright in his own sphere, in his own area of expertise. And Thor is that strength, and he is also the fury of nature and man when something like chaos, like the giants from Muspelheim or Niflheim try to invade this world, and this is all symbolic. The forces of angry passion, fire, and cold, slothfulness, and a desire for everything to go back into the void. When these forces meet and try to invade Earth, and then you can interpret these things as you may be inclined, but Thor is that god which can beat them off, and he beats them off through a combination of natural and human strength. And since humans are connected to nature, that's the natural part. And he provides the ability for harmony to exist. But I'm going to go ahead and do another set, and then I'll continue. Now the last god in Asatru that I'd like to talk about, Asatru being, of course, of our northern European ancestors. And like I said before, anybody can look up to these gods. Gods aren't concerned with skin color or place of birth, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many other people. The last god that I want to talk about is actually Vanir in origin, and this is symbolic as well. The Vanir are much more connected to nature than even the Aesir, which Thor and Odin are a part of, and They do have different realms, but the Vanir and Aesir basically are allies in a sense because of an ancient war between the consciousness of the Aesir, this is my own interpretation, and the elemental cycles of time, maybe not elemental, but the cycle gods that we know as the Vanir. This is where we get the term elven or elves. And they are very much connected to the cycles of nature and time itself. And basically, the idea of a war between the Aesir and the Vanir means that consciousness, since the Aesir won, basically prevailed over time. But there is a union and an understanding that both are necessary in their alliance. So Freyr went to the Aes, basically was traded to the Aesir, and he's part of the Aesir now. It's a vaster story than I'm letting on, but I want to talk about Freyr, so I'm just giving a brief overview. Once Freyr is a part of the Aesir, as he is now, he is a force of consciousness, but he started as a force that many of us know as peace, fertility, harvest. And he's very much connected to the production of the land and the peace that's required in order for produce to be grown. The peace between nature and man, the understanding between the two was required for farms to produce, is what is required, and the ability for man to appreciate the harvest that he receives from nature, and in the very end of time in Asgard, in the time in this cycle, I guess you could say, because in Asatru, in the religion of our ancient Northern European ancestors, there will be multiple incarnations of gods. Once Odin falls at Ragnarok, I might have said Asgard earlier, that's the home of the gods. Once he falls at Ragnarok, which is basically the fight between the downward pulling elemental giants and beings and hell, as compared to the higher forms of consciousness and nature and things like that. And the giants are very close to nature too, but the Vanir are the ones that are basically the relationship between nature and man in a very beneficial way. They can take away things as well, but it's more beneficial with the Vanir as compared to the giants, the Jotun. But at that time, basically Surt and Freyr will fight. And who is Surt? Surt is the one who rules over Muspelheim, the realm of perfect light and perfect heat, that if one follows Surt, won't be burned there, won't be blinded there. But he's a destructive aspect. He also claims to be, Surt also claims to be a creative aspect, that you need destruction in order for creation to happen, and that's true. So what does it mean when Surt fights Freyr? Freyr being the god of peace, of harvest, and still a good fighter, because that harmony and that peace requires a strength. What does it mean when Surt and him fight? Basically, it means that they will destroy each other, is what will happen at Ragnarok. We already know, because that's the destination of cycles and consciousness. It means that the pure destructive element that is Surt will meet the peace and harvest and beneficial nature toward man from the land. They will meet and they will destroy each other. So destruction will be destroyed, but so will the peace and the harvest, and that capacity that man wants to exact from nature will also be destroyed. They will destroy each other. Neither one is more powerful necessarily, but that battle will take place in such a way that basically life will not be able to continue as it has. If everything is burned by Surt and even destruction itself is destroyed, then there will be a void. There will be a void that exists for the next cycle to come about. Now there are a few details about Freyr that I'm not going to touch upon, but this is kind of how I understand Freyr. And Freyr is a he's a male. He's a masculine god. He's sometimes symbolized with the phallus. His rune is oftentimes Ingus, and his sister is Freyr, which she's the goddess of wealth. Well, alongside her father with Njorn, and Freyr's father too. That's Freyr's father as well. But wealth and harvest basically being veneer shows you a little something. And Freyr also rides a boar called Golden Brusty, I think, or Bursty, Golden Bursty. And it's a golden boar with that shoots out light. It has its own symbolism. But the three gods that I look up to most, the first and foremost being Odin, Thor, and then Freyr, in that order. I look up to them and I've received benefits from them. And I'll get into those benefits in just a second after I do one more set. Before I go to the new exercise and end the video. But anyway, I look up to these gods because I feel their presence in me as a person. And I would suggest that you look to the gods of Asatru, if you're interested in Asatru, as someone who's trying to find similarities between what you think your purpose is and what you think your nature is, and basically the gods that epitomize these natures and purpose. Now, that's a very broad statement, but basically you have to understand yourself before, at least understand yourself to a certain extent, before you try to understand the gods. And once you understand yourself, it's easier to approach the gods that you want to approach for different means, even if you don't feel like you have the same nature as Freyr, but you want love and wealth in your life. You have to understand yourself first and then approach from a place of understanding. And once you approach from a place of understanding, Freyr is more likely to deal with you. And if you understand her, that much more better. It's another 50% of what is necessary. And approach the gods like that. Approach the gods of Asatru with the understanding of yourself and them. And it doesn't matter what skin color you have. It doesn't matter even sometimes what you want. It's all about understanding, consciousness, and your knowledge about the gods. Approach the gods in Asatru like that, and you should be able to maintain some connection after you achieve the original connection, which may take several workings. I'm not going to go into how you work with gods, how you offer things, how you meditate before them, but learn the runes, learn some basic meditation techniques, learn about the gods, and see if you can work out a way to approach them. But I'll get into how to approach them in a future video, but thank you very much for watching. If you like this, hit that like, thumbs up down there, and I will make more videos about this in the future. Thank you very much.